And I realized people can change, and the person that he was before he was transformed is likely not the person he is anymore. And the release and the forgiveness is actually something I think is a secret sauce to be able to live a life of freedom and with fulfillment. Because if I ever allowed any of the perpetrators in my past life to influence the person that I am today, to make me mistrust others or not join in relationships because I'm afraid of getting hurt or afraid, you know, then they won. But I never allowed them to win. And so, in a sense, I just feel like forgiveness is one of my secret sauces that has really helped me find that fulfillment in my life.
In the aftermath of the Me Too movement, how can we deal with these traumatic events like a boss mama? Today, we're talking to Melissa Ng Goldner. Melissa is Chinese American, and she graduated from the University of Mary Washington. She spent her career mostly in consulting and eventually became the partner at Ogilvy and Mather and now partner at Profit. In Boss Mamas, we talk about how we deal with breakdowns and trust that these breakdowns will lead us to breakthroughs. It's often the hardest moments in life that help us to grow the most. And Melissa is a great example of this. Melissa shares her journey from being known at school as a kid with a violin to having to face rape and sexual abuse. Melissa shares how also today she's grateful for these tough experiences. They helped her get really clear on her mission, which is to help raise the voice of marginalized women. I'm excited for you to meet this boss mama. Melissa, I'm so excited to talk with you. One of the things that was crazy about a fun fact about you was your name. And so I'd love for you to share with our friends here, what is the background about your name?
Well, my name, it's more the genetic test. My brother took a genetics test because we always were questioned, are you really fully Chinese? Are you really fully Chinese in all of our all Asian kind of church groups that we used to go to? Because we always looked a little mixed. So my father encouraged my brother actually a couple of years ago to take a genetics test. We were always told we were Chinese, and we found out we're mostly Chinese, part Korean, a little bit Finnish. I don't know where that comes from. And we found out that a long, long, long ancestor of ours is Genghis Khan. Not something I'm really proud of, but I don't think I have any choice with regards to that.
That is so random. That's so random. I didn't even know you could take a genetics test to get you to that kind of ancestry, but
Exactly.
maybe
It
one
may
day I can
uncover
find
things
out.
you don't know, but some people like transparency and all the knowledge.
All right. With that said, an ancestor of yours being Genghis Khan, I got to also say one of the funny things about learning about you, Melissa, is that you have this bracelet that says
Yeah,
Boss Mamas.
right here.
Oh my gosh. I'm looking at it, Boss Mom.
Oh,
I
this way.
mean, that's crazy. And where did you get it? Like, what's this about?
So one of my little cousins, and she's always going to be little to me because I always think that she's 8 years old, but she's 27 now, 28 years old. But she saw that these bracelets were all the rage on Insta and all these different things. And she's also very Asian and said, I'm not going to spend 20 something dollars on something I can make myself. So she made it for me, and I wear it almost every day, and I bring it to work. And I really, sometimes if someone said something that really pisses me off, I look at it, and sometimes people touch their fingers and they breathe 3 deep breaths. I look at the bracelet, it's my count of 1, 2, 3, and I look back and address the situation in a way where I feel empowered and that I have strength and I will be able to move forward no matter what.
I love that. Both the bracelet and the pause, Melissa, because I often do that too. Even whenever I go into a meeting or pause, I don't have a bracelet, but I'll take my breath, slow it down, 3 seconds, set an intention and go. So I love that. And I love the visual reminder. That is amazing. And hats off to your niece, who's probably not 5 anymore. How old is she?
She's like 28. But she's always going to look young to me,
I know, mine
or
too.
she's
I
always
look at
going to
my
be my little
cousin.
cousin.
Yeah, I'm like, you're my little cousin. You're 10. I'm like, no, he's 30. Stop.
Exactly. It took me a while to realize when she was 21 and I found out she was able to drink. I was completely flabbergasted. It took me probably 5 years for me to really feel comfortable with the situation.
I hear that. So there's a lot of just kismet, I think, between you and me. And the other thing that I thought was just like really interesting is names. So we're talking about your name, and you have a 1-year-old, right?
Yes.
And tell me about her name and the background there.
So my daughter's name is Emily. So Emily was also the name of my husband's younger sister. His younger sister was one of my best friends in high school, actually. And unfortunately, she passed away around 5 years ago due to an accident at work. And the interesting story about this, it's fairly bittersweet, is that with that loss, it kind of fueled the impetus and foundation for my relationship with my husband. Emily is also, by the way, the name of my mother, who I consider one of the greatest heroines in the entire universe. So to be able to call Emily by, with two really important women in our lives, it just made a lot of sense. And it's a way to continue her legacy.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry about your friend, and I imagine that was hard. Like your best friends since you were, high school, and this happened 5 years ago. So why are you, like, the gratitude for that? I don't, yeah. Can you walk us through that? Like, how did that work? Like, how did that even impact your relationship with your husband?
So, when she passed away, it was a very difficult situation, and of course I went to the funeral. Her brother went to the funeral. I had a crush on him throughout high school. He was that really sweet, genuine person that would always open the door for anybody. He happened to be popular. I was not popular. I was known as the girl who carried her violin everywhere, first chair in orchestra. I'm still proud of it, but anyway, different, right? Different groups of individuals. And he was in a relationship at the time, and I was in a relationship at the time. However, when I went to the funeral, it was like a flood of memories of how he was a gentleman and all these things that occurred to me. And little did I know something similar happened to him as well. Fast forward, it was probably like 3 to 5 months after the funeral. I ended up breaking up with my boyfriend at the time because he was purely a fuddy-duddy. It just wasn't going to work. I always give people too much the benefit of the doubt, and that's another, it's a strength yet a weakness. But that just naturally didn't work. And apparently, his girlfriend and their relationship naturally didn't work. We had not spoken, okay, at all. And I was out with a former colleague of mine, and we were talking, and I thought about him, and I said to her, and I put his name out there, and I said, I think I have interest in potentially getting to know or hanging out with a man I have not spoken to or hung out with in 16 years, Matthew Goldner. And she's like, yeah, you're a little, maybe do something a little bit more realistic, like maybe be in the same circle of friends, And I remember being like, whatever, but I had this desire in my heart. The night that night I went to bed, the next morning I woke up and he wrote me on LinkedIn the night that I said his name out loud. And so I did the calculations and the math. We hadn't seen each other for 16 years since high school. If the day that he mentioned it, the chances of that happening is 0.0000, like 36 or something like that. So otherwise, math's way of saying fate. I do believe it was truly fate. And we exchanged numbers and we hung out for the first time, and that was it. We ended up dating, and fast forward, we're married, just moved into a house last week, and have a beautiful daughter named Emily, named after his younger sister.
Oh my gosh, Melissa, that is crazy. I mean, imagine we're sitting at a bar and you're like, hey, I'm interested in this guy who I've never talked to for 16 years.
Right.
And there he goes. He emails you, LinkedIn messages you like the next day. I don't know. That's like, it is these weird alignment pieces where I also believe that when you put that out there, the universe responds. I know that sounds so woo and not something I learned in business school or really from many people, but I just believe that. I so
I
believe
believe it
that.
too. I mean, the fact that you started a company that's focused on boss mamas, and I saw the email go out and I wrote back and said, hey, I actually have a bracelet. We should probably talk. I think, this was meant to be as well. And I could feel it when I talked to you. So I
Aw,
believe it. Totally
I do
believe it.
too. I do too. So, Melissa, one thing that really has come to me when we've been talking is just how these, terrible things happen. And most people, I mean, most normal people, when terrible things happen, we stick with it, right? It's like, why did God or why is the universe giving me this really bad hand? It's terrible. I'm really sad. And yet you've had a few of some pretty hard experiences, even starting back when you're a kid. I'd love to just like share for you to share more about that.
Sure. The best way to describe it is that, I have a very strong why and a very strong purpose. And the rationale behind why that is and why it's so strong is due to these situations that occurred when I was either in my childhood or early adulthood. So there were two situations that occurred that really created an imprint in my life. The first is I was raped, and the second one was I was sexually abused by my Asian piano teacher. So both of them really created a situation, one which was a moment in time, and the other one was a prolonged period of time, which in a sense I feel like is even worse because I saw the piano teacher every single week. But it created a time where I was feeling very lost, very angry, very frustrated. But being raised in a very Asian, very conservative Christian family, you're taught to kind of keep your mouth shut or not complain. Otherwise, you'd be a burden upon your family members or burden on your friends. Also, as part of my culture, it was all about kind of respect for your elders. So respect for your teachers, right? Respect for anybody that's older than you, respecting hierarchy. So given that my piano teacher was a teacher of mine, he was also Asian, so we shared similar cultural values. I really now understand how I was taken advantage of based upon that as, my upbringing. But he was sick, he would, I was probably a preteen and not even developed or fully developed thus far. And he would, try to touch my undeveloped areas, my breast area or my butt, and, tell me that in order to be talented in piano, we had to keep this between us, and I always felt like there was something wrong about that. Like something didn't feel or sit right. But because we were taught to respect your elders, I was conflicted with these different types of messaging. So it occurred week over week. He would send my parents upstairs so we could focus on my talent. And he would play these weird games with me where he would take a pencil and put his hand over it and ask me to hit his hand. And if I didn't hit his hand, I would hit the top of the pencil. It's just very weird experiences. But these experiences really made me feel like I didn't have a voice. I didn't have the opportunity to speak up. I was afraid I was going to get disowned. What if my family wasn't going to forgive me? What if they thought it was my fault? And because of that, it's really created this purpose of mine that I am here to really uplift and find the voices of the unsung heroes and heroines, and also uplift and amplify the voices of people in historically marginalized groups, especially around women.
You and I share that passion, Melissa, and I really appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing that story. I too had a piano teacher, and I actually have a piano teacher for my kids. And it's such a tiny New York apartment, so I'm not sent anywhere to not watch what's going on. But how many years did this go on? Like, how old were you? Like 10, 12? Like how? So
I
many
think I was
years.
around 10 to 12, and I think I had the lessons for at least like 2 to 3 years, maybe even more. It's all fuzzy to me because I don't actually think about it very often.
Mhm.
But it happened for a while. And finally, I told my mother that, I just didn't want to continue with piano because I wanted to focus on violin. I was able to leverage my cultural norms and expectations to get out of a really unhealthy situation. Fast forward, they now know about it and have explored whether or not this piano teacher did the same thing to other children at the time. And we haven't seen any other reports, but I felt like it was my responsibility to say something in case there were others that were victimized to this type of behavior.
I completely hear that, Melissa. As an Asian American Filipino myself, we are, seen, not heard. We are obedient. Like that's a good girl thing to do. And to even raise your hand to say an elder did something wrong is not, it's just not done. And who the bad person will be is probably the person who even said anything. So tons of, just bravery for even raising your hand and trying to have that conversation with your mom, because did you have that conversation? I know you talk about later, and we'll go to that, but did you try to have that conversation other than I want to focus on violin, or that was just like, I'm going to be quiet the whole time?
I was quiet the whole time because I was so fearful of, potentially being disowned, in a very conservative and Christian family. There's a lot of judgment that occurs even within a church, and I was just, I think, really scared, and I wanted the support system that I had, and I was scared that I wasn't going to have the support system if I spoke up. It wasn't until I was in college where I actually volunteered as a rape counselor, and I was seeing these young girls getting raped by multiple people at a time, and I was there to really showcase what their rights were. And I think something that was helpful, based upon my experience, was I was never judgmental. There were a lot of individuals that try to push these new victims to report or do all these different things. And a lot of the counselors I found were actually molested or raped in their past. And this is one of their ways that they were healing. I didn't realize I was, healing during the process, but I would say as an end product, it did help me kind of be able to find my voice. When I saw time and time and time again, all these girls come into the hospital and feel like their voices were taken away. Some were willing to report, some weren't. They were the ones that gave me the strength to do it. And I was probably triple their age at the time. And so they were the inspiration that actually had me sit across my mother and tell her about both the rape and the sexual abuse that occurred earlier on in my childhood.
Wow. Wow. It's amazing that the service you're providing was actually the journey that you needed to heal, to help them heal, actually helped you heal. So let's go back, because I want to go to that conversation with your mom and your parents. And so you got this creepy violin teacher. And meanwhile, you also mentioned there was another terrible incident that happened. And how, like, if you can share a little bit more about that.
Sure. The other one was I was raped in high school, and it was very difficult because I wasn't popular by any means. I mentioned before, I was always known as the girl who would carry her violin and got walked to, elementary school by her grandpa, every single day. So I was always the Asian girl with the violin. Additionally, I was one of the only Asian girls or Asian people that grew up in a predominantly all white community and very Catholic. So I was, in Sesame Street where they show three oranges and the banana, I'm the banana. It was like very obvious, like which one doesn't belong. In fact, and people giggle about it now, but I was actually put in English as a second language class because when I went to school and saw that I looked like I had black hair and everybody else had blonde hair or red hair, that I didn't belong. So I didn't speak, even though I knew English very well. And they put me in English as a second language class with one other fellow Asian student. And I was like, this is what you do. You take this apple, you move it here. And they realized that I was, an imposter. I didn't belong there. But my father actually, ironically, he was so ashamed that I was in a class that required more support that they unfortunately stopped speaking Chinese in the household, so that I would better assimilate. I understand, their intentions, but unfortunately, I can only understand Chinese when spoken to me, but I have to respond in English. It's somewhere in there, but I can't pick the words from my brain and be able to speak.
So I have that actually too, Melissa, where my parents were trying to help me and wanted me to assimilate as well. So I spoke English and my parents spoke English to me. And it was only until my parents started talking behind my brother and my back about what we were doing or whatever
Oh,
code, I started to really learn. And so me too, whenever I try to talk in Filipino, it's just like a jumble of words, but I can understand. So I'm actually
yes.
working on it right now, Melissa, learning that language to speak it much better. So anyway, there's hope for us. There's hope for us to
Yes.
come back. Yay.
But
So,
I'm so
so
sorry, I didn't answer your question. So, being in part as part of, a really predominantly Asian family and one of the onlys within school. So if you picture it, I was carrying that violin. I was, that person that wasn't surrounded widely with friends. And then I was raped by a very, very popular, older than me, uh, football player and so when it even occurred and, I did tell, a small amount of friends of mine in my group, even some of them didn't even believe me because they thought to themselves, why wouldn't she want to, have sex with this popular guy, and so in a sense, due to our differences in terms of our popularity status, the belief in what occurred, I really struggled with that. I even questioned myself, and that was also another reason why I didn't speak to my family members or my mother or my father about it, because I questioned, I'm treated even with my friends that it could also been my fault. So it was this guilt, and it took many, many years. And I would say it took until the years when I was in college, helping other rape victims to terms with what occurred with myself.
oh my gosh, I can't imagine that you're also petite, right? And this boy, this football player is a lot bigger than you, and to have to just protest and say no, how is that done? And then later to try to talk to your friends about it and not even feel heard or valued for the bravery you're taking to share.
It was a very lonely place. And what you mentioned before, where when a bad situation can happen, people are like, why did God do this to me? Or you have a lot of anger. Those questions did come in my head. I was very upset. I actually, that created a moment where I ended up realizing that all these friends that I thought that I had, these handful of friends, when this occurred, um, only two people really checked up on me on a day-to-day basis. And so I'm so grateful now because it was one of those life sifts, those natural sifts where you realize who your real people are and who aren't the people that should be in your life are. And that occurred really, really early because of this situation that happened. However, I am so grateful now that earlier on in my life, I was able to figure out who were my core people that are still my core people now, and not waste any time and energy on all the others that weren't my real friends. They were more superficial friends. So things happen for a reason. I just didn't understand it at the time.
Things happen for a reason. It's hard to think about that when we're feeling so lonely and people aren't hearing you and some terrible things have happened. And to have that belief that things do happen for a reason, it's a huge thing that I also practice in Boss Mamas we talk about. So I really appreciate it. So let's go to that moment now, Melissa. You're
Mhm.
helping these rape victims and you're helping them heal, but also you're healing yourself. And you find that you want to have this conversation with your parents. So talk to us about that. What did that look like?
So one of the things that I mentioned earlier was it's part of my culture. We didn't want to burden other people. And I didn't realize that one of the reasons why I may not have spoken up about it was because I didn't want to burden people with the all the feels, that was going on and the guilt. By the time I was in college, I had healed. I had forgiven. It was a very interesting thing because this is interesting. So I decided to get baptized very late in my life. I actually thought about getting baptized much younger. I'm a granddaughter of a very famous pastor, and my father also used to speak at church. So, the fact that I took up to my late 20s, I think I was 27 years old, and decided to get baptized was a huge deal. The reason why I mention this is because when I was 27 years old and I got baptized, it was all about forgiveness. It was about forgiving the church. It was about forgiving the person who raped me. It was about forgiving the person where the piano teacher who sexually molested me week and week and week. And the best way to describe it was that when I got baptized and it was all about forgiveness, these shackles were released. Like this weight that I was carrying on my shoulders was all released. Ironically, the night that I got baptized, the guy who raped me tried to add me as a friend on Facebook. Okay. The night, just like the night I mentioned, my husband's name to my friend and colleague was the night he messaged me on LinkedIn. Okay. So I'm like, God, are you serious? I called him JC, Jesus Christ. I'm like, JC, like, I just got baptized tonight. Okay. Like, can you wait 1 week before you tap on someone's shoulder to ask me to be a friend and test, my forgiveness? And I thought to myself, well, I forgave. And I clicked yes. And that guy has completely changed his life and has dedicated his life to helping others, has dedicated his life to Christ and is helping others find their purpose in life and things like that. And I realized people can change, and the person that he was before he was transformed is likely not the person he is anymore. And the release and the forgiveness is actually something I think is a secret sauce to be able to live a life of freedom and with fulfillment. Because if I ever allowed any of the perpetrators in my past life to influence the person that I am today, to make me mistrust others or not join in relationships because I'm afraid of getting hurt or afraid, then they won. But I never allowed them to win. And so, in a sense, I just feel like forgiveness is one of my secret sauces that has really helped me find that fulfillment in my life amidst whatever has happened in the past.
Oh my gosh, that's so powerful, Melissa. I can imagine that you're even in that pain, and I'm imagining you with the rape victims and helping them process that you're processing and you're seeing. Did you know back then that forgiveness would be releasing the shackles? Like, did
No,
you know, or did you just, how did you embrace forgiveness as the thing before you did it?
I can't really put my finger on it. When I was in college, I didn't realize it was all about forgiveness. It was all about, for me, to accept. It was about acceptance. It was
Mhm.
about acceptance more so than forgiveness, accepting my past and understanding that it has actually allowed me to be a better rape counselor than many others. People said, wow, Melissa, many people that have not maybe experienced the things that I experienced in life, that try to be rape counselors, many of them actually can't stomach a lot of the things that occur. Because when you're raped and you go to a hospital, they basically molest you again. The doctors are taking photos of your naked body. They're plucking hairs off your body. You've already gone through a traumatic experience, and now you're going through another traumatic experience with lights and all these people in these suits coming in and coming out. It's not a very personal, warm situation, and you don't oftentimes feel like you have a lot of support. Um, but I feel like, they kept telling me, Melissa, for some reason, you're able to have so much calm in the middle of chaos. And I think it was because I had those experiences before. I had been in their shoes. So I was able to sit with them in their level with no judgment. I didn't try to push them to report. I sat with them and I said, here are some facts. These are some options, but I'm here with you with regards to whatever you decide to do, because whatever happened to you was not your fault.
Mm.
And you can heal no matter whatever way you need to. And it helped me understand kind of the intersectionality of different people's perspectives. And I think that's helped me to be a better leader today,
Mhm.
is that not everything's just black and white. There are people that if they were to tell their family, they would have been disowned.
Yeah.
You know, there are cultures out there that if someone was raped and they found out, they would be killed. The person that was raped would be killed because it was not an honor. It was a dishonor to the family. And I think it was one of those realizations at that time that I realized, wow, amidst all these things that have occurred in my past, and amidst what I'm doing right now, counseling another person that's going through this, there are other people in the world that have a lot worse, that don't have a voice, that don't have the ability to speak up. So let me take that and create it into courage and have that conversation with my parents. And it
Oh
was in
my
my
gosh.
adulthood. I was in college.
So thank you for sharing. I'm now taking that forgiveness, which is so powerful, and acceptance and forgiveness. And now you're having this conversation with your parents. How did that go?
So my father, he graduated MIT in 2 years and high school in 2 years. He's very, very smart. And we used to have more of a business kind of education relationship versus a feelings relationship. So I was really shocked that when I told him this, he was the one who viscerally or showcased the hardest time. He had to get off the phone and take a couple of days for him to even reorient. I felt comfortable finally at that time talking to them because I had healed. So I didn't feel like I was, you know, asking them to do anything. And little did I know that they were going to be brokenhearted because of the news. When I told my mother, it was very different. We were eating lunch and I was discussing with her, that I would love to tell her something, that's occurred in my life. And I mentioned that I was raped and I was sexually abused, and she was just silent. It was like we continued having our meal, and I was getting so frustrated. I was like, give me some emotion, like I'm finally telling you this. But she showed me in different ways. So I remember this because in my Asian family, whenever my mom brings us shopping, I usually have to bring my own wallet. Even as a kid, like, do you want to go to the mall? Bring your wallet. We went across the street to, I think it was a Linens and things. And if my mother did buy me anything in the past, it was on sale. But there was a lamp and it was $99 and it wasn't on sale. And my mom got it for me. And I think it was just, she was trying to showcase her way of like, I'm sorry that this happened, when she wasn't able to fully articulate it herself.
So I want to talk about how, as a mama, this influences you raising Emily. And these are really personal things, right, to share. So what's your vision as a boss mama, as a mama to Emily? Like, what are you, and of course you're trying to lift up the voices for all marginalized women, but what are you trying to, model or share with your daughter as you do this, important work?
So while I was pregnant with her, it was the middle of COVID. And, I had her still during COVID. I had been recruited potentially by Google and Profit Consulting. And Profit Consulting offered me a partner level position. So really scary. It felt like it was leapfrogs away from what I was doing. But I would say because I had Emily, I wanted more than ever to lead by example and really lean in and reach for the stars when provided an opportunity. I really, truly, in my gut, believe that you will learn when you put yourself in situations that you may not always feel comfortable and you may be a little bit afraid of. But because, I had her looking up at me with her beautiful bright eyes, I realized, okay, she gave me the strength to be able to, say yes, accept, in the middle of a global pandemic where I haven't even met many people face to face thus far. But she's given me that strength to really be able to lean in.
It's amazing. And not only lean in, but you negotiated without not passively. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I've been really, really privileged and honored and lucky to have access to a plethora of badass women, C-suite level, people in a program called Women in America. It's a women's leadership program where you're connected with other women that want to create the next generation of women leaders, right? And one of them taught me when I was at my last company, I had gotten a promotion. And the reason why I have quotes like this is because it was more work for the cost of inflation. And that's what actually my mentor said to me. She goes, you didn't get a promotion. She's like, you got a title to do like more work with the cost you would normally get in inflation. Go back to your boss and say that the next day I'll talk to you at 4:00. I was like, excuse me? She's like, go to your boss and tell them that, connect with me this afternoon and let me know how it goes. I was like, no way, there's no way. As an Asian woman who grew up with my cultural norms, also as a recovering people pleaser, these are not discussions that you have. You don't negotiate, you accept, And she gave me the accountability to have that discussion. I remember it very, very well. I was sweating. I felt like I was going to faint. I kept laughing, being like, I'm going to throw up. I'm going to throw up. I think I even said that in the conversation with my boss at the time, but I mentioned that this wasn't a promotion. This was, more work for the cost of inflation. I said those words. And at the time they said that there wasn't anything they could do about it, but then I ended up getting paid out the highest bonus. So of the practice. So that gave me the understanding and realization that if you don't ask for it, you're not going to get it. And so fast forward, as I was negotiating this profit offer, I'm more than doubled my salary. I was an owner of stock in my last company, which you don't know, you're not given the promise that you're going to get it back. So was able to pay that. And the last thing I asked for was, I want the North America president, who happens to be an Asian woman, the first Asian woman in my entire career that I see has an executive leadership position in a company of 7 companies I've worked with, in my entire career. I said, this is important. I want her to be my executive sponsor. And I said to the executive recruiter, wonderful offer, thank you so much, but I would like this woman to be my executive sponsor, the president. And he's like, oh, we could try. Most likely, we talked to the most likely. And I was like, most likely is not going to cut it. If you could get me a yes in writing, I will put pen to paper on the offer. 30 minutes later, I got the offer with her as my executive sponsor.
I love it, Melissa. You're not only are you speaking up, but you're speaking for what you want. And Emily's driving that, right? If you don't speak up, like, how is she going to speak up?
Right.
And now she's seeing her mama be a boss mama. That allows her then to go even further. So
I know I should get my cousin to make her another bracelet called Boss Baby.
A baby one. Boss baby. That's awesome. All right. With that, I want to just share, if we break down these strategies for boss mamas, right? It's like taking breakdowns and putting them into breakthroughs and just trusting that these horrible moments, that there's a reason. And then second, interrupting the cycle, that it could be generational, but we have the power to interrupt, and not only interrupt for, our past, but make things better for our kids. And if we don't even put ourselves out there, those requests, how are we to be able to get more and get more of what we want? So would you add anything to those kind of codifications of what you shared?
I would just say, you could apply that also in the workplace. If the systems are broken, create new systems. One of the things that I take pride in is, when I'm looking at an organization and looking at a client, I actually have the opportunity to reshape how a system could potentially work. So how can we create a system that elevates those voices in a way that it's not a nice to have, it's something that's always happening and the foundation of what makes a system successful.
Love it. System changes, not just with ourselves, but the entire organization, which is great. All right. With that, let's do some fun. I know we've been really heavy in this, but let's do some fun lightning round questions. First one is chocolate or vanilla?
Vanilla ice cream, but chocolate if it's solid.
Right. Cooking or takeout?
I love cooking. I find it's very cathartic. My husband's more the takeout person, so we compromise sometimes, but cooking for me.
Climb a mountain or jump from a plane?
You know what? I've done both. I think that climbing a mountain, because the jumping from a plane is so short and you don't put that much work except walking out of that door.
Have you ever worn socks with sandals?
No, nor will I.
How would you rate your karaoke skills on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being Mariah Carey?
Ooh. I would say 5, 6. My karaoke skills are higher in the shower than they are in public.
Okay, what's a recent book you read?
I'm going to botch the title, but it's something about life in transitions. It's talking about how life doesn't necessarily have to be vertical moves, that there could be lateral moves and different. It's more of a lattice where things happen for a reason that you don't have to historically just look up and go up.
And what's your favorite way to practice self-care?
I love massages and I love cooking and family time.
What's a good professional development you've done?
I recently got accepted into this program called See Ahead, and it is a program that helps women become future C-suite level individuals. So it teaches you the power of networking in a way that's authentic to yourself. It teaches you negotiation. It teaches you all these different critical skill sets that I wish I had learned when I was in high school.
What's your definition of a boss mama?
authentic. I think a boss mama is a person that creates their own metrics of what success looks like, and
Great.
being able to live by those and not letting go of your value system in the process.
What advice would you give to your younger self?
I would say forgiveness is really powerful, and I'm looking forward to you understanding the power of it and how it creates fulfillment within your life later on.
And then where can we find you? Like LinkedIn or anywhere else?
Yes, LinkedIn, and then I also have a community Facebook page called Communication Strategies for Women in the Workplace. So I just post articles that I've read, and then create a summary in like 5 bullets. So if people don't have a lot of time, they could just read the 5 bullets and hopefully walk away with a tidbit that makes their life a little bit easier.
Great. And last question, Melissa, do you have a final ask, recommendation, or any parting thoughts for the audience?
I guess my parting thought would be, trust the process. Your feelings are completely valid. Feel those feelings. Don't shove them down, because you are human and it's natural to feel those feelings. But once you do, recognize that sometimes it does take time to realize, that there might be a lesson learned or a little nugget of wisdom that comes through your experience. And sometimes you just have to wait for it.
Beautiful. Melissa, thank you so much for this conversation. I
Thank
really enjoyed
you.
it. I really
Me too.
appreciate your vulnerability and very much grateful to you. Thank
Thank
you.
you. All right. Take care.